Hello and welcome to the Fallout Experiment. I'm going to make another video today because I don't know when I'm going to make another one, and also I kind of want to talk about another anime because I kind of rewatched a little bit of it and I wanted to just, make a review of it, which is what I do anyway, but that's not the point. We're going to talk about Fullmetal Alchemist because it's one of my favorite animes, and it's one that I think, while a lot of people know and like, it's one that I have met people who haven't seen it, and I think that this is probably the best anime for anybody who doesn't really watch anime or isn't really sure or doesn't know what they would like to get into, because it really has everything that you would want in an anime and more, and so we're going to talk about it. Fullmetal Alchemist, basic premise is two brothers, Edward Elric, who is a blonde-haired prodigy that has just always been very great and intelligent and an amazing alchemist, and his brother Alphonse, his younger brother Alphonse, who is also a very good alchemist, but nowhere near the skill of his brother. They end up trying to bring back their dead mother, and in the process, Alphonse loses his entire body, and his soul is bound to a suit of armor, and Ed loses an arm and a leg, and therefore gets automal limbs. And so they become state alchemists in search of the Philosopher's Stone so that they can basically fix what they did wrong, fix themselves. And this show starts out, just as them searching for things, and demonstrates their brotherly bond. Another example of it's kind of like the bond between Sam and Dean in Supernatural done perfectly. And by that I mean, while Ed and Al will sacrifice for each other quite a bit, you always feel truly connected with them because their relationship feels more real. You saw them grow up, you've seen them actually go through things. Their plight is dire, and they have very distinct personalities, and it feels more relatable and feels more real, and because of that, when they fail or when something happens to one of them or there's an issue between them, it's very painful. For example, there's an episode where Al thinks that Ed has just created him to think he was a real person. And Ed wants to ask him something but can't do it because he's afraid of the answer. And by the end of the episode, he ends up asking him something, and it's a very touching moment. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody, because anybody that sees this review and wants to go watch Fullmetal Alchemist afterwards, that is one of my favorite episodes, so I can't spoil it for you. But it is a very touching episode, and there are a lot of heart-wrenching moments in this show. Another thing about this anime is it's kind of got like a cyberpunk thing to it, or not cyberpunk, steampunk feel to it, which is really, really neat. But we'll get more into that later. But that's what makes Fullmetal Alchemist such a great show. And so let's talk about the artwork here. Everything looks really good. Everything's drawn good. It's all very solid. It manages to mix kind of brighter colors with dull, like dark and dank and mysterious kind of things, and I feel like that's really good. And there's some pretty horrifying imagery, but it's toned down enough so that, like, unlike later in Evangelion, To Beat a Dead Horse, where it becomes so uncomfortable you can't do it, this is continually a shock because you don't see it very often. And like Death Note, Fullmetal Alchemist, while it does has a lot more physical action than Death Note, there is a lot of talking and a lot of thinking, and a lot of the action in this is less fighting. I mean, there is a good deal of fighting, but there is also a great deal of Ed and Al using their wits to outmaneuver their pursuers, especially later in the series. But the art stylings for this mix very well and are very well done. Everything looks really great. The characters, the backgrounds, it's very... You can feel the essence of this world, and it feels like it's its own place. And it feels very familiar, but at times very different. which is a really good thing because, like with Fully Cooley, you feel like you could be part of this world, but at the same time, it feels so alien that it keeps you interested in seeing what this world is. Like I said, there are moments when the image is very disturbing and is kind of surreal, even, which is really cool. So from there, we'll talk a little bit about the music in this. And in case I didn't clarify earlier, we're talking only about Full Metal Alchemist, not Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Because while Brotherhood is very good, and I would recommend highly to anybody, the debate between which you want to watch more between Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood comes back to which you like more, reading the manga or watching the anime. As somebody that prefers anime, I'm talking about the one I have the most experience with. So, but anyway, that being said, the music in this ranges from, your basic kind of background music to very creepy, atmospheric stuff. I distinctly remember a lot of times being creeped out by the music that was going on, as well as there being some pretty fun moments when the music was going on. So, again, the soundtrack, pretty fucking killer. So, what makes Full Metal Alchemist one of the most standout animes I've ever seen is because the relationship between Edward and Alphonse is a very, very intense one, and because of that, because of what they go through, and because of the things that you watch them go through, you feel very invested in this show. And, there's a lot of fun in the beginning, like Trigun, there's a lot of fun and more innocence in the beginning, but as they awaken to what's going on in the world, it's very dark and droll, and you're kind of like worried for them because there's some serious shit going down. And even the supporting cast are characters that you may not see so very often, like Colonel Mustang, are just characters you feel a lot for. And there are some moments in the show that literally brought me to tears, especially with, and any fan will tell you, the scenes with the Colonel Hughes thing. Any fan will tell you that was one of the most heart-wrenching and hard to watch scenes I've ever seen. I mean, and this is, I watched all of Evangelion and felt really uncomfortable, but what happened with Colonel Hughes, I mean, right up there with Shinji's plight, right up there. But that being said, it is a fun ride, and it is an interesting ride. There are moments where it's very cerebral, which again is really cool. It's a very character-based thing, which, if you know me by now, I really enjoy things that are character-based. And even though the characters drive the plot forward, by that I mean basically without Ed and Al, there is no show. They're essential to the way the show moves and the way things happen. They have a very vast impact on the world, and that's very hard to do without making your characters feel like they're gods, So the fact that they're doing this, and even though their influence is very impactful for the world that they live in, at the same time, it feels like they are normal people, and you see that in the fact that they make mistakes, and that they have very human reactions to things. And there's a lot of character development between the two of them, where Al kind of becomes more independent as he grows up, whereas Ed, even though he becomes more independent, becomes more cold-hearted in a way. But that's a really tricky one, and there are a lot of actually interesting thoughts that come through the show. I won't say that necessarily it's super deep, but there are some interesting things that they say in this show, and it could be taken as angsty in one regard, but in another regard, I think it's really kind of some profound thinking from such a young mind. Like the whole spiel about how even when you don't want it to, even no matter how much you try and block it out, the world's still going on. And, it's an obvious thing, but, when you're coming to that realization for the first time, it's a very big realization for you that you are such a small part of the world. So whether or not you participate in these big events doesn't matter, because they're still happening. And that's a really, weird and big realization for people, I think. And, I was a lot younger when I first watched this show, so that was a very big and instrumental thing for me. Now it's just kind of a neat thought. So, This is a very interesting setting for a show, and it's a very, you can see that there are moments when the mental states of the characters are put at risk and everything, and you know they always kind of crawl out, like the characters in Firefly. They're good at getting out of bad situations. They're very lucky in a lot of ways. So overall, Full Metal Alchemist is absolutely hands down one of the best animes I've ever seen. And to anybody out there who hasn't seen it, I recommend watching that and then checking out Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood if you want. For anybody out there who's watching this or knows somebody that's like doesn't know how to feel about anime or doesn't know what and hasn't seen anything, definitely recommend this to them. This is a really good starter anime along with Death Note and even Trigun. It's something that's pretty accessible, and a lot of people will nod in agreement as one of the better ones, and at the same time is something that's got enough experimentation and uniqueness to it that it doesn't just feel like it's a run-of-the-mill thing. It doesn't feel like, oh yeah, it sounds like the Beatles, therefore it's as good as the Beatles. No, it sounds like the Beatles with a twist, that kind of thing. So definitely check out Full Metal Alchemist, and if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe for more. And if you have any suggestions on what I should review next on the anime reviews section of the channel, send me an inbox or comment below. Anyway, it's been the Vault Dweller with another edition of Anime Reviews. Over and out.